Hello and welcome to the Homeless Consultants channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant. And today, well, I'm running out of ways to even introduce the topics I have to talk about with you folks. Just when you think Minnesotans can't get any, shall we say, less intelligent after what happened a year and a half ago, the riots, burning down buildings, shooting, carjackings, crime everywhere, the Minnesotans' response to this in Minneapolis, Looney Town, is to put a ballot measure that they're going to vote on next week to replace the Minneapolis Police Department. And they haven't really said exactly what they're going to replace it with, but here's what they do say. Replace the Minneapolis Police Department with a, quote, Department of Public Safety that would be responsible for, well, here's the quote, a comprehensive public health approach to safety, unquote. Folks, it's not the government's job to keep me safe generally. It is their job to keep me safe from, say, communist China invading. It is their job to keep me safe from a criminal who is breaking the law, perhaps to attack me or otherwise injure me. Yes, but their job is to enforce the law. That's why they're called law enforcement. If you haven't been able to read between the lines of what they just said here, what they're saying is we want to forget about the law altogether. The law isn't the issue. It's health regulations that we want the police department to concern itself with. Now, how many times have I talked in these videos about anti-smoking, going back 30 years? How many times have I talked about health fascism and the absolute corruption and incompetence and negligence of our healthcare system in this country? How everything in our life, how many times have I talked about the way that Nazi Germany came to power essentially, for what it's worth, at least 50% on a, quote, public health agenda. Because what is it to create the Aryan race, to create the perfect, healthy race? Powerful, strong, healthy, pure. Straight out of Darwin. You remember the title to Darwin? It says, The Origin of Species. But then the subtitle says, and the preservation of favored races. Sucks to be one of those unfavored races, which were the black ones, according to Darwin, the savages and things. You see, this is all a direct descendant going all the way back to Darwin. The Nazis came in and said, well, our agenda is really evil. It's brutal. It is totalitarian, it's violent, it takes over the minutia of everybody's lives. Nobody's going to vote for Hitler into office on that. So, along with our political agenda, we're going to push this idea of making everybody safe and healthy and pure and strong and powerful. And we're going to call them Aryans. And that, more than anything, is probably what got them into office. It certainly wasn't their political agenda, well, to some degree, but knowing how violent the Nazis were, that's not what did it. But the idea of people being safe, because when you scare people about health, that's a very personal thing to people. And that's how all these health agendas have managed to take over all these years. That's why anti-smoking was the next step after the Nazi Aryan experiment, more or less. They took what the Nazis did and they changed it to get rid of the stuff that, didn't work there. But a lot of it did work. In Nazi Germany, You weren't a doctor. You were not a practicing doctor. Practicing, by the way, not an expert, but practicing. You weren't a practicing licensed doctor unless you were a member of the Nazi Party in good standing. And we have the same thing today. The member of this lunatic agenda, you're not going to be a part of it unless you're at least not a threat to that agenda. You're not going to be a practicing doctor, surgeon, physician, specialist. You will go along with the system. You will go along with this loony bird healthcare system we have. This health insurance system that violates the law of supply and demand. When you make health insurance available, now you have money to pay for healthcare. Therefore, according to the law of supply and demand, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Yeah, prices rise. And when you create this big, huge behemoth health insurance system, healthcare prices skyrocket out of the stratosphere. And hey, what do you know? That's just what we've got today. So these people essentially want to turn the Minnesota Department of Health into the new Minneapolis Police Department. So let's say you're getting raped. Okay? It's not the crime of rape that's the problem. The rapist might be let go free. Okay? But they have to test you first to make sure that you weren't injured. And they have to make sure that you get proper counseling as a victim of rape. Okay, the perpetrator really isn't the issue. It's you. We're going to look after your health because you're not a responsible adult who can do it yourself. You see. Oh, you got shot? You got shot in the heart? Well, the police will act like, first responder emergency medical professionals. They're going to not worry about the criminal who shot you. That's not the point. The point is that you need to be healthy. So they're going to look after you, the victim, and they're going to make sure you get to the hospital so you can be with those practicing doctors who haven't quite got it right yet. They're just practicing. But they call themselves experts. But the perpetrator who shot you, that's irrelevant. That has to do with law. That's not what this police department's about. Okay? Oh, you got someone down there who is, he's been looking with binoculars and a camera at your 7-year-old daughter outside the elementary school. We're going to send the new Minneapolis Police Department over there. So the police get there, they see the guy sitting in his car, he's sitting here, and they start walking over and they're thinking like, well, he's not really hurting anybody, is he? Hurting. There's no safety problem here. And then they look 10 degrees this direction. Somebody's smoking a cigarette and they're only 49 feet away from the door. They're not 50 feet away from the door. Come on, get in. We got this. And they pull out the tape measure and it's like, yep, you're 49 feet from the door. That sign clearly says you cannot smoke within 50 feet of this door. Meanwhile, over here, that other guy, while all these police are distracted, is putting a 7-year-old girl in his car and driving away at high speed. That's what the idiots of Minnesota want. After we had this complete breakdown of law and order. That's their response. Folks, I can make 200 plus videos about Minnesota here, but they speak for themselves. These people are out of touch with reality. There was a time in human history, it was a time that was called most of human history, up until very, very, very recently, all the way back to the beginning of time. People who behaved like that in society, they were thrown into an institution. They were removed from society so that they could not hurt society. They were called what they are, which is crazy. They're insane. And they need to be removed from society so that society is safe. That's where safety comes from. So next week, Minnesotans or Minneapolis people are going to vote whether or not to replace their police department which enforces law and maintains law and order, at least it's supposed to. Maybe if they had a even remotely competent mayor, they would do so. They want to replace that basically with a healthcare system wearing a badge. And again, the Minnesota schools don't really teach anything exactly, you know, history, legitimate science versus junk science. They don't really teach things, so the idea of how the Nazis could come into power and take over your daily life, ultimately, it wasn't their political agenda. It wasn't, well, here's our political ideology. You disagree with it, therefore you're a dissident. Yes, to some extent they could do that, but in ordinary daily life, in the office, at the shops, on the streets, in public places, the way that this was enforced was always brought back to health. Because health is something that people just, who's going to say, well, I don't care about health, I want everyone to be unhealthy, I want to be unhealthy, I want to die young. Nobody says that, nobody wants that, right? So you can always, if things start to get out of control, you can always bring people back into the fold by framing whatever you're talking about is in terms of health, even if it has nothing to do with health. The same department, Minnesota Department of Health, that shut down the only hotel I could really afford, where when I was staying there I could actually save money because I wasn't spending all my money on a hotel. And it was in better condition than the one I'm in now. But they shut it down for their own reasons. Nothing to do with health. Nothing. That's what Minneapolis wants to replace their police department with. Folks, when I became homeless, the straw that broke the camel's back, and I've said it many times, was when the police department refused to enforce the law. Now, I brought up things about health, about sleep deprivation, about the effects of loud and violent noise and that kind of terror, you know, adrenaline rushes and what happens with the chemicals in your body. I brought that up to demonstrate why I want them to enforce the law. But in the end, I was telling them to do their job, enforce the law, and they refused to do it. That's the problem with police departments like this. And that police department was essentially an outskirt of the Minneapolis Police Department. So ultimately, as I fought this battle uphill, where it crested and it went downhill and it couldn't go any other way, at the very top was the day a police officer came to my home and he refused to enforce the law. And he told me I should just move away. It's all me. I'm the one who has to bear the burden of everything, and he wouldn't do anything about the perpetrator. Now, I didn't ask them to replace the police department. That would be stupid. I asked them to hire police officers who do their job, just like I do my job, because they have a well-defined job, and he didn't do it. That was the problem. So if there's anybody out there who has something to say about the Minneapolis Police Department, it would be me. I've been living in a car for almost 7 years because of their failure to do anything. But never in a million years would I even suggest replacing the police department. That is stupid. Instead, I'm asking the police department to do what I would ask any business to do, which is your job. What you accept a paycheck for. And their job is to enforce the law. The legislator's job is to create the laws. Your job is to hold the legislators accountable so that if they create stupid laws or damaging laws, like the smoking ban and all this that was based on junk science and completely divided our society, it started us on this path towards a division in society today. Once they literally split the country in half, smokers, non-smokers, and just said you can't talk to each other anymore, you can't be in the same room, you can't do this, you can't do that, unless one of the groups pretends that there's something they're not. Once that happened, that was the crest of our society. And I've said it all along. Anti-smoking was the division. It was the time when everything could only go downhill from there. And like I said in a couple videos back, with the smoking bans, trailing right behind it was the opioid epidemic. Because it's easier to get opiates and heroin than it is to buy a pack of cigarettes, especially for a younger person. All these things were going to follow. You could tell they were going to follow. It was common sense that it was going to follow, and it followed. And now you've got the same thing going on with climate change and with coronavirus, and you can just predict what's going to happen from it. Their police department will be more concerned with whether or not you're wearing a mask than whether or not you have a sharp knife in your pocket, which you intend to stick in the heart of that individual over there. These people are insane. These people should be the ones who are being removed from society, not the police department. Remember, all of human history up until 20, 30 years ago, all of human history, and that's if you believe the Bible, 6,000 years, or if you believe evolution. I'm sorry if you do, but if you do, billions of years, all through history, people who are insane are removed from decent society so that they don't hurt anybody, and so that they don't turn the society insane, until a few decades ago. And this is what we get. So let's see what happens, folks. Do Minnesotans have it in them to finally stand up and do something that's intelligent and makes perfect sense and actually looks after their own best interests? Or are they once again going to fall for the peer pressure, which is the only thing these people have going for them, is their ability to pressure other people like little children on a schoolyard? What are the Minnesotans going to do? I have my idea of what they'll probably do, but I honestly don't know. This one is so monumentally stupid, so epically, unfathomably dumb, especially when they don't even have a plan. They haven't even presented what it is they want to replace the police department with. You don't even know what it is you're going to get. You only know what you're voting against, not what you're voting for. If Minnesotans are that stupid to vote for something like that, folks, all bets are off. This state is just going to be the laughingstock of planet Earth. And frankly, it already should be. But with that, you won't need me to tell the world that. They'll figure it out on their own. Let's see what happens next week, folks. Minneapolis voting to replace their police department with some unknown, undefined entity that focuses on health rather than law and order. Keep your eyes on the news. And thanks for watching.